After saving the male lead who had spent his life as the deep-feeling supporting role, I thought the story had finally settled. But just as our lives seemed stable, the heroine divorced. With merely one phone call from her, Julian would walk away from everything we had built. Even our 5-year-old son Leo clumsily helped them hide their meetings. Later, Leo tilted his head up and looked at me with a chilling detachment. "As long as you let Aunt Serafina be my mom for 3 months, she won't die," he said. "I'm willing." I sat quietly in the study the entire night, the silence heavy around me. I didn't move until the butler knocked on the door. "Madam, the young master can't find you. He's crying terribly." I didn't respond to the butler. Instead, I reached deep into my mind and awakened the long silent system. The system's voice was cool and familiar. "Your reward is ready," it told me. "Do you want to return to the real world?" I smiled faintly. "Yes. I hate you." My son Leo shoved me away, his small hand sweeping all the homework off the desk in a fit of rage. "Why can't you be gentle like Aunt Serafina? You're always mean to me." Hearing this, I froze. The papers in my hand fluttered to the ground, carried by a stray breeze. I knew that not long ago the heroine Serafina had divorced the story's original male lead. I also knew that Julian had been running back and forth between Evergreen City and Oakhaven these days, all because of her. But I hadn't realized that Leo had already been brought to meet her. I grabbed his shoulders, my eyes turning red as I asked, "What did you say?" "Serafina? You know her." Julian had probably warned him not to reveal this secret. Leo backed away in fear, stammering, "No, I don't know anyone." He broke free, knocked me to the floor, and ran back to his room without looking back. Sitting on the ground, I thought of the day Serafina divorced. It wasn't until that day that I learned the phone Julian had specially prepared for her 7 years ago had never once been turned off. He would charge it every day and regularly check if any messages had come in. The ringtone he had set for her alone rang again after 7 long years. The divorced Serafina was just like she had been before. Whenever she felt wronged by the male lead, she would go to Julian. As long as she looked back, he was always there. I always thought that 7 years of time had warmed Julian's heart, but it turned out he could declare his love for me while running to Serafina without hesitation. I remembered the day I was carrying a feverish Leo, wandering the hospital halls alone. I called Julian 3 times. On the 3rd call, his phone shut off completely. After that, whenever Serafina called, Julian would abandon us without a second thought. It turns out that no matter how the plot changed, as long as she was the heroine, everyone would fall for her again and again without regret. But every time I looked at Leo, none of that mattered anymore. Julian or Serafina, what did they have to do with me? As long as I protected this little boy and watched him grow up well, then this whole journey wouldn't be in vain. Julian was destined to be the second male lead who would love the heroine so deeply he would die for her. On the first day I arrived here, the system told me that my mission was to save Julian and prevent him from entering his death storyline. According to the plot, after the heroine and the male lead got married, he would fall into depression and eventually take his own life. The first time I met Julian, he was trying to protect Serafina. He was luring away a group of thugs by himself, only to be pinned down in an alley and beaten until he was covered in blood. First, I honestly looked down on him. To live and die for a woman seemed pathetic to me. But when he lifted his face, smeared in blood, and glared at me with that fierce look in his eyes, I suddenly remembered my own shattered body in the real world, broken beyond repair. I wanted to go home. I wanted to survive. So I gathered my courage, walked toward him, and handed him a tissue. As expected, he stood up, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and coldly told me to get lost. He was a notorious campus bully. No one dared provoke him. Serafina was a resilient white flower, destined to go from a sweet campus love with the male lead to a perfect fairy tale marriage. And that was indeed what happened. On the day Serafina and Caleb married, Julian was drunk out of his mind. At that time I was still by his side. He answered a phone call, and I vaguely heard Serafina advising him, "Julian, everyone has to move forward. You should go find your own happiness too." That night, Julian kissed me for the first time. He was drunk, fervent, and burning. He asked, "Elena, are you willing to marry me?" There was no proposal and not even a ring. But I still nodded for that fleeting and forbidden heartbeat I felt. After our marriage, it felt as though he had completely erased Serafina from his memory, loving only me with all he had. On our wedding day, he put the ring on my finger and cried so hard he was trembling. Later, when we had a child, even if I turned over in the middle of the night, he would wake in a panic and ask if I felt unwell. Everyone said Julian loved his wife to the extreme. The housekeeper and the nanny said he cared about me more than anything. But the truth was that Julian loved me and cared for me only on one condition: that Serafina no longer needed him. Whenever Serafina's heart was broken by the male lead, the deeply devoted second male lead was always her second choice. Those enviable campus romances in novels often end like fairy tales, and no one dares imagine what comes after. No one thinks about how dark things become once the fairy tale ends. Here, the final ending was that Caleb, the male lead, cheated on Serafina with an intern from his company in their 5th year of marriage. He even allowed the intern to provoke Serafina right in front of him, becoming a completely different man from the one he once was. Serafina, who married right after graduating, had been spoiled like a delicate flower. She was a prestigious university student who had stayed home obediently as a housewife. After the divorce, Serafina became like a giant baby in society. She relied on Julian for everything, and Julian was all too willing. Getting up from the mess scattered across the floor, I warmed a cup of hot milk and walked toward Leo's room. Before I even pushed the door open, I heard him talking to someone through his kid's smartwatch. His soft, childlike voice drifted through the door. "Aunt Serafina, when will you and Daddy come pick me up? Leo wants to go to the amusement park." A lively, sweet female voice responded, "Oh, Auntie doesn't dare take you out casually. Your mom would be mad." Leo panicked immediately. "I won't tell Mom. It's our secret. I won't tell her." Serafina laughed lightly. "Oh? Does Leo not like his mom?" Leo hesitated for a moment, then finally said firmly, "I like Aunt Serafina. I wish Aunt Serafina could be my mom." Julian interrupted him then, his voice following right after. "All right, don't say nonsense. What if Aunt Serafina gets upset? How would I be? Kids say anything." "I like Leo too," Serafina said meaningfully. "If I could be Leo's mother, I'd be very happy." Julian paused for a second before coaxing him. "Be good, sweetheart. This is our secret with Aunt Serafina. If your mom..." Leo hurriedly cut him off, proudly saying, "I know I'm calling secretly. Mom doesn't know anything." Julian seemed to laugh, then suddenly hung up the call after a startled sound. My hand holding the milk was already turning red from the heat. I waited outside the room for a moment before finally pushing the door open. Hearing the sound, Leo, only 5 years old with every emotion written on his face, quickly hid his things and looked at me with a guarded expression. I crouched down and looked at him carefully, studying his features. He resembled me very much, with curved eyebrows and round, watery eyes. When I was pregnant with him, Julian hadn't been very happy at first. Using too early as an excuse, he tried to persuade me to get rid of the baby. I didn't understand why then, but I still begged him to let me keep the child. Now I finally knew. Back then, Serafina wasn't pregnant. In Julian's heart, having a child meant betraying Serafina completely and irreversibly. Seeing my expression, Leo reached out on his own, trying to take the milk. Normally, I had to force him to drink milk every night before bed. But tonight, he reached for it himself. I moved the milk away and said calmly, "If you don't like it, then don't drink it." His eyes lit up. "Really?" I nodded. "From now on, you can do whatever you want. No one will force you anymore." I stood up and walked out. Behind me, Leo shuffled after me in his slippers, calling nonstop, "Mommy! Mommy, you haven't told me a bedtime story yet." No matter how he called, his mother did not turn back. He leaned against the door, his small body angled outward, face full of confusion. Because before, whenever he called Mommy, she would always turn around with a warm smile. I could turn a blind eye to Julian's blatant cheating, but what I couldn't accept was that the child I carried for 10 months would also come to hate me because he liked Serafina. How could I possibly accept that? He was a piece of flesh that fell from my own body, a life I nearly lost my own to bring into this world. How could he follow his father's footsteps and discard me like I was nothing? I kept tugging at my hair in the hallway, fistfuls of it coming loose, horrifying to see. I kept reflecting. Was I really too harsh on him? I stood up and slowly walked back to Leo's room. When I pushed the door open, I saw him holding a comic book, flipping through the pages again and again. I walked over, crouched in front of him and said, "From now on, Mommy won't force you to do things you don't like. If you don't want to drink milk, don't want to eat vegetables, or don't want to learn piano, Mommy won't force you. Mommy is also being a mom for the first time. Whatever I didn't do well, I'll change." I felt my voice tremble. Because I've never been properly loved, I don't know how to love you either. I could only clumsily give you the love I thought I should give, fumbling as I tried to figure out how to love you. So could you not abandon Mommy so quickly? Leo hugged his book, staring at me blankly. A hint of hesitation flickered in his eyes before he raised his little hand and wiped away my tears. But then he turned around and lay on the bed with his back to me. "Mommy, what are you talking about? I don't understand anything." I snapped back to my senses, realizing how pathetic I looked. I smoothed the corner of his blanket. I reminded myself not to blame a child who was only 4 or 5 years old. He was at the age where he didn't understand anything yet. His character still unformed, easily swayed by others. I could sacrifice my life for him. I couldn't punish him for his father's sins. The next day I did something rare. I didn't wake Leo up. When the nanny finished getting him ready and he came out with his backpack, I was sitting in the living room. I glanced at his bag. The little Disney chipmunk that originally hung from it was gone, replaced by a pale blue pony charm. "Who gave you that keychain?" I asked casually. Leo instinctively covered it and answered nervously, "Daddy bought it." I nodded and didn't ask further. He stood at the door for a while, hesitated for a long time, then finally said, "Mommy, aren't you taking me to kindergarten today?" So many explanations hovered on the tip of my tongue, but in the end I only said softly, "Let the nanny take you." That night when Julian came back, I was sitting on the sofa, unmoving, staring out the window. On the table was a stack of printed photos. He took off his jacket and, acting as if everything was normal, leaned close and pulled me into his arms. Right before he kissed me, I raised my hand to block him. "Don't, you're dirty." Julian froze for a moment, his eyes darkening. Then he laughed softly. "Then I'll take a shower. Wait for me." As he stood up, I stopped him. "Whatever you want to do out there, I won't stop you. But Leo is off limits. I don't care if you date Serafina or sleep with her. Just don't you two dare involve Leo." Julian's movements halted slightly. Then he sat on the single-seat sofa and casually picked up a few photos, flipping through them. "What? You hired someone to follow me?" I didn't tell him the photos were from Serafina. I didn't want to know her motives. "Do me a favor, stay away from my son." I stood up, expressionless as I looked at him. "Just 3 months," Julian said, grabbing my wrist, his tone gentle. "Leo and I just need to accompany her for 3 months. Then she'll survive." I stared at him in disbelief. "What kind of insanity are you talking about? Elena, you're not the only one with a system." He laughed mockingly. "Didn't you get close to me because of yours back then? Serafina is the same as you. That's why Leo and I need to stay with her for 3 months. In those 3 months we'll interact as a family. After that, everything will return to normal. You, me, and Leo will still be a family." I fell silent for a long time before asking, "Julian, after all this, why don't you just divorce me?" His grip tightened. "Don't say things like that. We won't get divorced. She won't affect our relationship. Just think of it as saving a life, okay?" I let out a small laugh. "You love her so much. Can you bear for her to be the other woman?" He didn't deny the first half, but he hurriedly defended the second. "She's not a mistress. Nothing will happen between us." "I don't want to hear you use that word again." "And what if I don't agree?" I asked coldly. Julian hardened his tone. "I'm not asking for your permission. I'm informing you. If I say no, I'll die too. Do you still want me to refuse?" "Elena, must you always target Serafina like this?" "Targeting her?" "Right, ever since our first meeting, Serafina had never liked me. During our entire school years, Serafina was the delicate willow swaying in the wind, and I was the firecracker. Whenever she suffered even the slightest grievance, she didn't need to say a word. One look at Julian with teary eyes was enough. and he would go through fire and water for her. From the strictest disciplinary director to street gangsters, he feared no one for her sake. Meanwhile, I had to constantly pull him back to stop him from going down the wrong path. Yet Serafina, who clearly understood everything, calmly enjoyed every privilege that belonged to a textbook heroine. I never asked him to do any of that. Julian, can you tell your little watchdog to stop staring at me like a dog? The watchdog she mentioned was me. Back then, Julian's most common sentence was, Elena, if you keep targeting Serafina, just try it again. Later, after he suddenly grew up and saw things clearly, he actually apologized for that. But after all these years, I was hearing that same sentence from his mouth again. Everything from the past surged through my mind, and I even wondered why I ever lost my senses and decided to stay. Julian held my shoulders, trying to morally coerce me. Elena, that's a human life. If we don't help her, what will happen to Serafina? I pushed him away and shouted, Then let her die. What did I ever do wrong? Why do you get to humiliate me like this? At that moment, a childish voice sounded. Mommy. I lowered my head. Leo was clutching his father's pant leg with one hand and hugging a plush toy with the other, eyebrows furrowed as he looked at me. I hurriedly wiped my tears, afraid of scaring him. I wanted to reach out and hug him. No matter what, the child was innocent. But he sidestepped and hid behind Julian's leg, watching me warily. Mommy, Daddy, and I just need to stay with Aunt Serafina for 3 months so she can live. Aunt Serafina isn't taking anything from you. Why are you being so petty? I tried to reason with him gently. Leo, it's not like that. Listen to Mommy. This isn't right. But he angrily cut me off. Mommy, you just want Aunt Serafina to die. Why did you become so mean? For a moment, I felt my breath stop for several seconds. His childish voice was soft, but each word was a blade, sharp enough to slice through all my excuses. I looked at him and slowly lowered my hands, straightening up little by little. Maybe it was because the light in my eyes extinguished all at once, too hollow, too dead. Julian's expression flickered with a hint of panic, but he only patted Leo's head and said, Go back to your room and sleep. After Leo left, he turned to me. Even your son thinks you. Elena, you used to be so kind. Shouldn't you reflect on yourself? Because I was kind, I was supposed to let others trample all over me. Because someone said a single word, I was supposed to surrender my husband and son without complaint. I suddenly looked up and let out a small laugh. Julian, I agree. He froze. What? Word by word, I told him. You want to take Leo to accompany Serafina? I agree. Just not for 3 months, but forever. I took over what Serafina didn't want the first time. There wouldn't be a second. Julian's expression softened, as if pleased with my good sense. Good. It's only 3 months. After that, everything will be like before. No one will bother us again. I knew why he was so certain I would endure everything in silence. Besides knowing I couldn't let go of Leo, he also knew another truth. Once I chose to stay back then, I could never return. Here I was alone. I had no way out. But I didn't say another word. I firmly pushed him away. Julian, there will be no after for us. In my mind, I awakened the long-dormant system. My voice was resolute and unwavering. System, let's go home. I once believed that love could be cultivated. I thought that with enough time and affection, you could make someone fall for you wholeheartedly. But now I realize that idea was a lie from the very beginning. If love could truly be cultivated with time and effort, then any 2 people in the world could end up in love. And as for why love can make someone yearn for life one moment and yearn for death the next, the answer had already been written on the day of the first encounter. When I first decided to stay, the system had excitedly made a bet with me. If you win, I'll give you my blessing. The electronic voice paused for a moment, almost as if it sighed. If you lose, I'll still take you home. And now I've lost so completely I can't even lift my head. According to the system's progress, I have about 3 days left before completely detaching from this body. When the time comes, I'll leave this world in the form of death. It told me that in the other world, I have a perfectly healthy body waiting for me and a 50 million reward issued by the system. Not the most tragic ending, it said. And Julian, perhaps because everything was out in the open, would even bring Leo to see Serafina, making Leo say goodbye before leaving the house. I calmly watched them step out the door. Not long after, social media was flooded with photo after photo. The three of them looked like a real family of three, smiling brightly at the camera. Usually, Julian would drive from home to Serafina's place, pick her up, and then the two of them would take Leo to school together. Then it would be the amusement park, restaurants, swimming pools. In the videos, I could even hear Leo sweetly calling Serafina Mommy. And Julian, the same man who repeatedly claimed nothing would ever happen between him and Serafina, was shown in a quiet corner cupping her face and kissing her deeply. To please Serafina, Leo smashed his cherished golden piggy bank. Red bills spilling everywhere. He had once held that piggy bank proudly, promising me that when Mommy's birthday came, he would use the money to buy me a gift. But now, without hesitation, he exchanged it for a Bulgari necklace to give to Serafina. Afraid she would think the gift was cheap, he patted his chest and assured her he would buy her something bigger and better in the future. I turned off my phone and blocked the number that kept sending me those photos. Julian went out during the day to accompany Serafina, then returned home at night, as if he now had two families. I didn't quarrel or make a scene. Besides feeling relieved, he occasionally seemed a little uneasy, but he knew I had nowhere to go. So he would just say softly again and again, "Elena, Serafina is a pitiful person. Caleb cheated, and she was already heartbroken beyond belief. And with her health issues, she needs someone. We grew up together, I'm just staying with her for a while. When she gets better, I won't contact her again." I wanted so badly to ask him, if Caleb cheating shattered Serafina completely, then Julian, what exactly do you think you are doing right now? But none of it mattered anymore. I should have accepted long ago that the second male lead would always kneel before the heroine, without logic, without morality. So no matter what Julian said, I simply listened quietly, just waiting. During the 3 days I waited, I could feel my body gradually deteriorating. I could only lie in bed, eyes closed in a hazy daze. The system told me that my death would come with no pain. It would feel like falling asleep. At the moment my soul began to slip away from my body, the bedroom door opened. I turned my head. It was Leo, who hadn't gone out today. I watched him lean over the edge of my bed for a moment before raising his hand to shake me. When I didn't respond, he didn't care. He simply pulled over a charging cable and continued charging his tablet. A moment later he shook my hand again. "Mommy, I'm itchy. Mommy, scratch me." He leaned closer to study my face, hummed impatiently, then turned around and scratched himself against the side of the bed. After a while, the phone beside me rang. Leo picked it up. Julian's voice sounded. "Why are you answering? Where's Mommy?" "Mommy is sleeping," Leo shouted back. Julian coaxed him to wake me. Leo frowned and said, "I can't wake Mommy up. Aunt Serafina said Mommy is really good at acting, so she must be pretending. She wants to trick Daddy into coming back. Daddy, you just have fun with Aunt Serafina. Don't worry about Mommy. Leo is here." The child I raised with my own hands had grown to despise me this much. And right at that moment, Julian was retracing his old campus memories with Serafina, reliving their past sweetness. In the blazing summer sunlight, cicadas screaming nonstop, the man in a white shirt and black trousers and the woman in a white dress looked like a perfect pair. Serafina lowered her head, smiling. "I remember. It was on this path that you bumped into me and knocked me down." Julian responded casually with a soft He didn't know why he had sneaked away to make the call. Just a sudden moment of unease, but perhaps he thought he was imagining things. He soothed his son for a few moments, then hung up. After hanging up, Leo crawled back onto the bed and shook me hard again. Later, when he grew tired from playing in the room, sweaty all over, he climbed onto the bed and fell asleep beside me. The time the system bought for me was running out. And just when I still wanted to keep watching, a beam of white light yanked me downward with great force. And so, everything that happened in that world afterward became something I would never know. When I woke up in the real world, even the doctors exclaimed that it was a medical miracle. All these years, the system had been transferring money into my hospital account on schedule, and my life had been sustained by expensive medication. In the days leading up to my awakening, the system had fabricated signs of gradual recovery so my sudden consciousness wouldn't seem suspicious. While I lay in bed waiting to regain my strength, the system inside my mind was unusually talkative, as if wanting to spill out several years' worth of bottled-up words. It even began interviewing me about my conquest experience. Staring at the ceiling, I said with genuine feeling, "Men are like clothes. Never pick up what someone else doesn't want. The scent that belongs to another woman can never be washed off." I asked the system to help me buy an apartment in a suitable area. It looked through all the listings several times before choosing a riverside property, with a wide view and convenient transportation. In my mind it chirped excitedly, "Didn't you say you love big balconies? I picked this place because the balcony faces the river. When you wake up every morning, you'll see the first ray of sunlight." Suddenly, I felt that raising a son couldn't compare to raising an electronic pet like this system. Everything about it, every function, every rule was created solely to serve you. It would never betray you. "When will you leave me?" I asked. Its mission ended the moment it returned me to the real world. All these extra things it was doing now were only because it pitied how lonely I was. The voice in my mind grew quiet for a moment, then suddenly spoke shyly. Do you still like children?" I paused. "What?" It didn't answer. Not until I stood at my apartment door face to face with a 4 or 5-year-old child, big round eyes staring straight at mine, did I understand what it meant. You're the system?" I bent down, bracing my knees, hardly believing it. He clutched the straps of his little backpack, lifted his soft, round face and smiled brightly. "Mommy." It was hard to process. "How did you turn into this? Wait, how can you even become a human? I like you." He twisted his little body shyly, looking at me with nervous eyes. "Father God said I have a limitless lifespan, but humans live only about 100 years. Just one tiny moment. So, I want you to be my mommy. After 100 years, I'll go back to the system star." Afraid I would refuse, he pulled out a household registration booklet from his backpack. "Look, Mommy, there are 3 pages now. You're not alone anymore." I squeezed his chubby face, suddenly unsure what to do. Why do you even like me? I probably don't know how to be a good mom. I mean, look at Leo, didn't he hate having me as a mom? He wrinkled his nose and clenched his tiny fists. "He'll regret it." I brushed his hair with a gentle smile. Whether they regretted it or not no longer mattered to me. The Elena of that world had ended. The Elena of this world had just been reborn. I understood what the system was trying to do. Perhaps beings from different dimensions sometimes grew curious and wanted to experience the chaos and beauty of human life. He himself was like a child. Even when he was a system, he had always been a little clueless. During the early days of the conquest, I had treated him as a data center, constantly asking questions. Sometimes he would scratch his head, searching through mountains of data for a long time before stammering out the answers to me. I flipped through the registration booklet and noticed he had given himself a name, Quinn. After settling in, I immediately started looking for a kindergarten for him. Quinn was very well behaved. As if he had witnessed all of Leo's past rebellion and decided to become the perfect model child in contrast. Holding his hand, I gently wiped his fingers clean. Quinn, children are allowed to make mistakes. You're only 5 years old. No one expects you to act as mature as an adult. Paused looking at Quinn. But you can't make mistakes that cross the line. Since you're choosing to be my child, I want you to grow up like a real child happily. At that moment I wondered, were Leo's mistakes truly unforgivable? Absolutely not. I was simply too disappointed. First it was Julian. Then it was Leo. Whenever Serafina appeared, I was never their first choice. Both Quinn and I were starting anew. He stumbled his way through learning how to be a human child while I was relearning how to be a mother. With the reward money the system gave me, I began investing in various businesses. Maybe after falling to the bottom once, fortune finally started favoring me. Over the years, no matter what I invested in, the returns were surprisingly good. In the past, I revolved around Julian. Whenever he called, no matter what I was doing, I would instinctively drop everything and respond to him first. Maybe it was a leftover habit from the conquest mission, but even after marriage, I maintained that attitude. When he needed startup funds, I unhesitatingly emptied all my savings and even ran around helping him find investors. When he needed a partner for business gatherings, I put on high heels and smoothly drank wine on his behalf. Later, after Leo was born, the center of my world expanded to 2 points. I ran in circles constantly, burning myself out to take care of both of them. Over time, all that dedication became something they felt entitled to. And when they demanded more and I refused, they would become furious, trying to use every social and moral expectation about what a wife and mother should be to force me into obedience. But now I had learned how to love myself more calmly. Whenever Quinn had a school holiday, I would take him traveling everywhere. We stood on mountaintops conversing with the sun, moon, and stars. We dove into oceans and rivers to merge with the waters. We touched the texture of mountains and felt the intangible caress of the wind. Life is nothing more than sometimes being a reader of the world and sometimes being the writer of time. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, Quinn finished kindergarten and entered elementary school. He had grown a lot taller too. One day, I took him shopping for clothes at the mall when a handsome man approached us holding a bouquet of flowers. Instantly, my head throbbed. I hurriedly pulled Quinn in front of me, only to watch him open his little mouth and start rattling away. My mom only loves my dad. Daddy died, so my mom's heart died too. She just wants to live a quiet life with me. She doesn't plan to get married again. Sir, thank you for liking my mom. Sorry, please go back. The man looked at me, amused, then crouched down and handed Quinn the flowers. Uncle understands. No rush. After he left, Quinn tilted his head up. Mommy, you don't like that, Uncle? I patted his head. Mommy already has you. That's enough. Honestly, I now had beauty, money, a good figure, and a ridiculously well-behaved son. Why wouldn't I enjoy being a happy widow? Why would I torture myself by finding another man? 90% of men share the same flaws without exception. Even the best one spoils with time. Some suffering only needs to be experienced once. That night, Quinn rushed into my room in a panic and shook me awake. Mom! He pointed at his head. There's a fluctuation in the original world. Someone is trading their lifespan in order to cross dimensions. I immediately pulled him into my arms, worried. What do we do? Will it hurt you? Do you need anything from me? He shook his head and uttered 2 names. The ones making the exchange are Julian and Leo. I couldn't remember how long it had been since I last heard those names. After so many years, the memories had blurred. Sometimes, when they surfaced, it felt like something from a previous lifetime. Can we not meet them? I pressed my lips together. Can we refuse their exchange? Quinn shook his head. In the rules written by System Star for humans, lifespan and love are the 2 highest currencies. When someone uses their lifespan as payment, the system has to accept it. There's no way to reject it. So they can come anytime. Maybe a month from now. Maybe 10 years later. Then Quinn asked, Mom, don't you want to know what happened in that world after you left? He frowned. At that time, I didn't have enough energy, so I didn't detect the problem with the female lead. She did have a system, but it was different. Her system fed on devoured affection. The deeper the love she stole from others, the stronger her system became. Strictly speaking, she wasn't even the original female lead of that world. Mom, do you remember the intern Caleb cheated with? Actually, he wasn't cheating. The intern was the real female lead. But Serafina used her system to steal away the love that originally belonged to that girl. 5 years later, when Caleb met the intern again, he was subconsciously drawn back to her. He couldn't help himself. He divorced Serafina without hesitation, even at the cost of being labeled a cheater. When the stolen affection vanished, Serafina had to look for a new target. But here's the thing about her system. If someone's will is strong enough, it can't influence them at all. In other words, any affection that can be stolen is affection that was movable to begin with. From Quinn's fragmented explanation, I pieced together everything that had happened in that world after my departure. Julian didn't discover my death until the next day when he came home. When he pushed open the door, what he saw was Leo lying sprawled on his back, fast asleep beside me, while I was pale, ice-cold, and lifeless. At first, he simply picked Leo up and glanced coldly at my body on the bed. Elena, this was what you agreed to. What kind of stunt are you pulling now? The kindergarten teacher called me dozens of times. Said you didn't send him to school. Even the drawing assignment from a few days ago, you didn't help him finish. And the pink diamond jewelry I won at the auction, where did you put it? Take it out, I need it. Elena. He reached out to pull me up, only to touch a stiff, frozen corpse. Elena, don't scare me. He dropped Leo instantly and grabbed me into his arms, panicking. You're acting, right? You're acting, aren't you? How could you be dead? Serafina is still alive, how could you die? Elena, I won't go accompany her anymore. Anything you don't like, I won't do it again. I'm begging you, just answer me, please. He pulled the terrified Leo over and shoved him into my arms, holding onto both of us tightly. Leo, call your mom. Hurry. Tell mommy to wake up. Call her. He yanked the child violently, eyes blazing. When I told you to get mommy to pick up the phone, why did you refuse? Leo, I told you to wake her up. Why didn't you? You killed your mother. Do you understand that? Leo trembled from Julian's fury and burst into loud sobs. He didn't understand what death meant. He only knew he was scared. So he cried and cried, calling out, Mommy! Mommy! Later, when Serafina heard I was dead, she casually proposed marriage to Julian. She assumed he would agree. After all, previously it was morality holding him back. He still had a wife. But she didn't know that the medical report she had handed Julian, along with all the proof that her condition improved because Julian accompanied her, had just been confirmed fake the day before. Julian snapped. He grabbed her by the throat and roared, Serafina, why did you lie to me? You were never dying. But because of you, I drove Elena to her death. Elena didn't have a system. You didn't have a system. You played me like a fool. She's dead. I'll make you pay with your life. Serafina had never expected my death. Even the part where she claimed I had a conquest system was only a random guess, just to turn Julian against me. She never thought I'd actually die. After all, when she stole Caleb's love, the real girl simply walked away, proud and unbothered. She never caused trouble, never clung to him. Serafina sneered. UF*** king idiot. If you didn't already have feelings for me, I wouldn't have been able to trick you at all. Julian, admit it. You've been emotionally cheating on her countless times. And now she's dead. What the hell are you pretending for? Don't act like you were ever loyal. She had no morals. She didn't need them. As long as the act of devouring succeeded, she could reshape the entire world into one that existed for her, and she would be its only heroine. The intoxicating thrill of that power. No one would refuse it. Leo grabbed her pant leg, looking up with tear-soaked eyes, pleading, Aunt Serafina, my mommy is dead. Can you save her? Get lost. Serafina was already attempting to leave her body, preparing for her system to transport her to another world. At critical moments, the male supporting role of that world, Julian, was the only one who could stop her. She failed to escape. Julian locked her in the basement, obsessively digging for every secret she had. Until one day, unable to endure the torture any longer, she finally revealed the method for crossing dimensions. I didn't expect to see Julian and Leo again so soon. That early morning I opened the door, ready to go downstairs to buy breakfast, only to find two figures, one tall and one small, sitting right outside. At the sound of the door, Leo lifted his tear-streaked face and threw himself at me with joy. Mom! Mom, you're really not dead. Time flowed equally between the two worlds. Leo was 10 years old now, his features fully grown and defined. My hand tightened around the doorknob as I looked at Julian. His face covered in stubble, his suit wrinkled, and the edges of his leather shoes peeling. Elena! He stepped closer, raising a hand as if to touch my cheek, then withdrew it after noticing how dirty it was. Thank God. You're still alive. My son and I, we're here to apologize. He held Leo by the shoulder, looking me straight in the eye. I know all those years I wronged you terribly. I was blinded because of Serafina. I took your kindness for granted. I thought marrying you was settling, just putting up with life. He shook his head, voice trembling. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't because I was born for Serafina. I cut off his long-winded self-pity. Maybe you still don't understand. It wasn't about Serafina. If it wasn't her, it would have been someone else. Julian, you were born to love someone, just never me. The one who should apologize is me. I should never have forced your love into a different direction. I didn't look at Leo, who was staring up at me with reddened eyes, hoping to melt me with his pitiful expression. How could I not love him? Since the moment he was born, I had poured every last drop of love I had into him. Even when he turned against me for Serafina's sake, I never blamed him. But I didn't want to face him anymore. Didn't want to see those pleading, fragile eyes. Behind me, Quinn rubbed his eyes sleepily and called out, "Mom!" Seeing Julian and Leo, he immediately clutched my arm tightly and hid behind me. "You're married." Julian's voice cracked. "There's another man in your home?" Leo instantly grabbed my other arm. "Mom, why do you have another child? Did you stop wanting me?" I gently pulled my arm free, my tone soft but distant. "It was you who stopped wanting me first, Leo. I begged you once, do you remember?" His hands froze midair. His gaze darkened as he looked at Quinn. I turned to Julian. "Whose lifespan did you use for the exchange? Did you touch his?" "No." He shook his head quickly. "I know how much you care about him. I only used mine." I sighed quietly. Whether Julian died or not didn't matter to me, but Leo was still a child. Quinn had already told me. They couldn't stay long. Julian would never sacrifice that much of his own lifespan. I pushed Leo away. It wasn't now that I stopped choosing him. It was the moment I died that I stopped looking back. Julian had apparently circled around the area asking people about me, and was delighted to hear I lived alone with a child. "Elena, you still couldn't fall for anyone else. You're still hung up on me, why be so stubborn? It was just 3 months back then, forget it, forget it. Don't bring up the past." He reached toward me again. "Come back with me, okay? I know you must have a way. The kid and I can't stay here long. You don't want Leo to grow up motherless, do you?" Instead of answering, I took out my phone and dialed a number. A second later, an identical ringtone came from Julian's pocket. That ringtone was one he had set specifically for Serafina. And after all these years he still kept that phone with him. "Julian." I hung up and looked him straight in the eyes. "You still don't understand, do you? After everything that happened, you still don't know why we ended up like this." Quinn told me he could grant me one choice. As long as I wished it, Julian and Leo could remain in this world. "Mom, do you still care about Leo? If you want him to stay, he can stay with you." At the same time, Quinn said that in the other world, Serafina was resisting Julian's return with absolute madness. She begged me to keep that lunatic here and not let him return. She said she was willing to do anything. I gave no response. I simply carried on as usual, going to the company, going to the club, doing all the things I always did. Meanwhile, Julian and Leo followed me everywhere like restless ghosts, repeating the same words over and over. "Come home." People who knew me looked puzzled. I usually pointed at Julian and said, "He already has a wife at home, yet he brings his kid out every day begging me to be the boy's mother. Isn't that ridiculous?" Everyone looked at him with disdain. Julian held Leo's small hand tightly, standing alone in the wind without a single word of explanation. The night Quinn had acute gastroenteritis happened to be the same night our driver took leave. I was so anxious that I fumbled while calling the ambulance and packing things, holding Quinn in my arms. Julian rushed over, helped me without a word, and drove us straight to the hospital. Inside the hospital room, Leo sat quietly by the bed, carefully wiping Quinn's lips with a cotton swab. Julian stood beside him and seized the chance to speak. "See? It's not easy for you to take care of a child alone. If you really like this kid, bring him back with us. We can afford to raise him." I watched Leo intently. My mood shifted slightly. A decision began to form inside me. I turned to Julian and smiled faintly. "Julian, I haven't started taking care of a child alone just today. All those times Leo got sick, you were either at business dinners or on your way to see Serafina. Have you forgotten?" I pushed the door open gently and walked toward the two boys. Quinn was still asleep. Because of that, Leo's murmuring reached me loud and clear. "Mom is really something. Dad, Serafina, and I already apologized. What more does she want? We traveled all the way here. Why can't she let go of something so small? No wonder Serafina," said she. I stopped in my tracks and asked, "Said what?" Frightened, he dropped the cotton swab and turned around, his face pale. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that." Strangely, this time I felt no disappointment, no despair. Perhaps because I had long since stopped holding expectations toward him. I was too anxious at the time, my mind wasn't working. After all, Serafina was also my friend. What you all did was to save her. Sure, it ended in a misunderstanding, but what if it hadn't? Don't you think so? I asked him gently. Has your dad been treating Serafina well these past few years? Leo relaxed, then nodded. Aunt Serafina has been living in our house. Every day after work, Dad talks to her. But Aunt Serafina always ignores him. I asked again. And later, did you give Aunt Serafina more gifts? She must have been lonely. Leo pouted in frustration. She didn't like the gifts I gave. Mom, I like you and I like Aunt Serafina too. Can't you two get along? Only then was I certain. Perhaps because Quinn became human, the system's data transfer had gone wrong. Maybe Serafina really had been exposed, and Julian had indeed resented her deception and hated her for forcing me to my death. But in his heart he could never truly destroy her. Deep inside he still felt pity and affection for Serafina. So through all those years, though he imprisoned her, he never mistreated her. And Leo, influenced by him, copied his behavior, to the extent that he even forgot his own mother's death was caused by her. They were inclined toward Serafina by nature, even more so with the system amplifying it. I didn't dare imagine the consequences if I hadn't known the truth. If I had softened because of Leo's eyes for just a moment, I would not get a second chance at life. After Quinn woke up, I didn't rush to give him an answer. After spending a few days taking care of him in the hospital, I brought him home. When the elevator doors opened, I saw Julian and Leo waiting nearby, both looking at me with anticipation. Today was their last day here. I had told them that once Quinn recovered, I would take him back to that world. During those days, the father and son were exceptionally attentive, terrified that I would change my mind. Elena, when are we going back? Julian asked impatiently. What Serafina didn't tell him was that bringing Leo along would reduce his lifespan by an additional third. And of course I wasn't going to tell him either. I turned to Quinn and nodded toward him. You can start. Leo ran over, gripping my hand tightly with one hand and holding Julian with the other, joy overflowing from his eyes. The next second, Quinn activated the transfer system. I looked down and saw Leo's tightly held hand gradually turning transparent, fading bit by bit into nothingness. Julian also seemed to understand something. He lunged toward me with all his strength, but his now transparent body passed straight through mine. Elena, didn't you say we would go back together? Elena, don't. Tell him to stop. When Leo finally realized what was happening, he broke down and wailed, desperately trying to grab my hand. Mom, no, I don't want to go. Please, Mom, please. I bent down, letting my fingers brush away the tears on his cheeks. This is the last time I'll ever wipe your tears, Leo. From today on, I will no longer remember you. No matter what happens, I hope you can grow up to be a good person. That world was never mine to begin with. The people in that world never loved me. I had tried forgiving. I had tried softening. But the truth was cruel. No one had ever chosen me, not even once. In the end, the story turned desolate, and we all parted ways. Leo extra story. In the second year after returning to the original world, Julian began to fall ill. It was then that Leo learned that the space crossing had cost Julian nearly 50 years of his lifespan. After they came back from that world, Julian seemed to wake up from a long dream. He ordered people to take Serafina away. He often held Leo's hand, muttering in an old weary voice, "How could it be? How could your mother have known about Serafina? That's right, it must have been her system that told her. But you were the child she loved the most. Why didn't she even keep you? If you had stayed, maybe she would have come back to visit Dad." Leo pulled his hand away. He never told Julian what had happened that afternoon in Quinn's hospital room. Sometimes, he would think back and wonder why he had deliberately said those things loud enough for her to hear, why he had pushed her to question him further. If he hadn't done that, would he have been able to stay in that world? Would he have been able to have a mother? But Leo hadn't done that. He was 10 years old now. He understood right and wrong. He understood how the 5-year-old version of himself had step by step pushed his own biological mother toward death. He remembered her body beside him growing colder and colder. He remembered how he shook her and how no matter what he did, she would not wake up. That sunset had been blood red. No matter how much he cried, his mother never rose to hold him, never comforted him again. She used to tuck him into bed with gentle words. She used to cook soft-boiled eggs the way he loved them. She told him kittens and puppies were friends of humankind. When he was sick with a fever, she held him with red-rimmed eyes and sang children's songs softly to him. He had loved her, truly loved her. But he had also uncontrollably loved another woman, even wishing she could become his mother. His father always took him to see her. The woman was gentle, never raised her voice, and fulfilled every request he made. His father said it was the system's influence, that his mother also had a system, so if he could love his mother, naturally he could love someone else. Back then he didn't understand. It was only later that he realized. A mother is someone you love without needing a system. When he saw his mother again, there was another boy next to her, a boy his age. She held that boy's hand as they crossed the street. She sent him off to school. Leo often followed behind them, watching with burning envy. That should have been his mother. But every time his eyes met hers, memories would surge up. Her face filled with despair, her cold, lifeless body. A 5-year-old's memories are frighteningly vivid and impossible to forget. He was afraid that she would soften for just a moment and really follow them back to the original world. She didn't know that even more suffering awaited her there. His father had never been a good man. Weak, cowardly, irresponsible, always pushing all his mistakes onto the system. He was also afraid of staying behind. He couldn't face her. His mother was happy in that world. She had a child who loved her, a brilliant, colorful life, and a career she was proud of. He couldn't be the one who dragged her away from the beautiful life she had finally walked into. Later, Julian survived less than 10 years after returning to the original world, and he left everything he had to Leo. Leo, just as Elena had once hoped, gradually straightened himself out and grew into a truly good man. He took in stray cats and dogs, building a huge house for them. He insisted on doing charity work, donating to orphanages, giving shelter to children with nowhere to go. He even married a gentle, beautiful wife. Outside, he commanded storms in the business world, but the moment work ended, he would go straight home to be with his wife and child. He loved them dearly, and he never allowed them to suffer even a little grievance. Later, Leo discussed it with his wife and brought their child to visit Elena's world. By then, Elena's hair had turned completely white. She was downstairs by the villa, playing with Quinn's child. Leo's hair was peppered with gray as well. If one looked closely, one could faintly see both Elena's and Julian's features in his face. But Elena's eyesight had deteriorated with age, and she couldn't see it clearly. Leo nudged his child forward, nervous. "Iris, greet your grandma." Iris was only 4 years old, raised with perfect manners. She showed 2 tiny tiger teeth as she smiled. "Hello, Grandma. My name is Iris. Grandma, have some cake." Elena crouched down, studying the child carefully, dazed. This child looks so much like. This child is so adorable. "Grandma. Grandma has a red envelope for you." Elena searched all over herself, found a wrinkled red envelope, and stuffed it into Iris's hand. Iris looked at her father. Leo nodded. Iris stood on her tiptoes and hugged the grandmother with silver hair. When the sun set, Leo held his child's hand and left. Elena called her son, Quinn, over and said softly, "Deduct it from my lifespan." Quinn, now a CEO of a listed company, stood tall in his suit, sharp and imposing. He raised his hand and wrapped an arm around Elena's shoulders. "Mom, don't worry. Leave it to me." Worst case, he would go argue with the main god again. What could the main god really do to him? The sun slipped beneath the horizon, and the person was gone. Maybe stories always end this way. 2 blossoms blooming apart under different skies. The end. Please subscribe for more stories.